Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. My guest this episode is Cheyenne O'Day. Cheyenne runs sober sanctuaries at raves and music festivals, providing a safe haven for folks in recovery. And before we jump into the interview, I wanted to let you know that my new merch store is live at soberdadcrew.com. It even includes a special collaboration with Alexander Jones, who I interviewed for episode 28. All right, Cheyenne, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
What's up, buddy?
Not much. So
It's great to be on.
Yeah, I'm going to start this with different questions than I usually start, and I'm just going to ask you what you were doing this weekend.
All right. So this weekend was actually a music festival called Beyond Wonderland, put on by Insomniac, and it actually got the significance of being the second largest music festival in the country this year. There was 105,000 people gathered at the NOS Event Center in San Bernardino. And, I've been in the Los Angeles rave scene since I was 14 years old. And my first party was in June of 1992, a party called What? And, I was, so this weekend, I have the wonderful opportunity of being part of something called the Consciousness Group, which is actually, it's under the umbrella of a nonprofit called Harmonian Inc. And basically what we do is we go into, I think it's somewhere around 40, 41 music festivals a year around the United States. We do mostly all the Insomniac festivals. And then we also do like Lollapalooza and Camp Bisco and Outside Lands. And there's quite a few other festivals. We've recently just started taking on most of them are dance music festivals, but we also recently just started taking on some rock and roll festivals. Like this year was the first year we did Aftershock Festival in Northern California. And basically what we do is we go into the festival, we set up a tent, we make it very inviting, and then we create basically essentially a sober sanctuary. And my sponsor, a gentleman by the name of Pato, who I think you should definitely interview, is one of the best sober dads you'll ever meet, and he's just phenomenal human being. And my sponsor and a couple of guys, one of my sponsee brothers and another gentleman, we just had our 10-year anniversary last September. So like a little over 10 years ago, got the idea because, like myself, my sponsor's been in the rave scene since the early 90s. And, and when I got sober, man, I was convinced that that aspect of my life was over. I was like, the fun's over, the party's over, I'm going to sit in a room full of old dudes smoking cigarettes and, and like you see in TV or something, with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just was in a place attempting to be in a place of acceptance of that. But not too long after I got sober, I met Pat or re-met Pat because we actually knew each other from the scene from a long time ago. And that's the beauty of getting sober is you'll find people that you never knew you'd see again that found their way to the rooms, and so they got this idea to bring sobriety into a music festival because one of my sponsee brothers was struggling with the idea of not being able to go out and do that stuff anymore. And he just did it anyways. And they came to this realization that something like that needed to occur. And so in 2013, they started the Consciousness Group. They approached a gentleman by the name of Pasquale Rotella, who owns Insomniac, who's a friend of mine and my sponsors. And he was gracious enough to be like, yeah, man, what do you need from me? And the first year I volunteered was the first year it was in existence. And I think we maybe had 10 people come by the tent. And all of them asked the same question: how much are the tapestries? like nobody knew what we were there for. There's 12 volunteers, and we'd have 10 people in the meeting, and Because what we do is, so we set up a tent, we make it very inviting, and we host like sober support meetings because we can't be directly affiliated with any fellowship
Yep.
due to traditions. Um, but essentially, we get people from all walks of life, from all the fellowships, and even people who aren't necessarily in a fellowship but just choose to be sober and want to meet like-minded individuals. And I got to tell you, man, at our it gets me like emotional. At our 10-year anniversary at Nocturnal Wonderland, we had like 150 people crammed into this little tent. Everybody circled up and praying, and we gave ourselves a little birthday cake, you know, and it's just like God was undeniable in that moment. You
Yeah.
know, it's like to be in a place where you've got people that are all the way down to 18 years old and all the way up to, you know, 50 in their 50s and 60s. We have our volunteer who ran the tent last night. Um, we call him Peace, Disco Kelly or PCH Papa. He's 65 years old. He didn't go to his first rave till he was 60, and he's around 20 years sober. And he was offered the opportunity to come volunteer at one of the festivals and just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And to see him running around last night at like 65, and he's got bright rainbow overalls on and a bucket hat with airbrush painting all over it, and like little hearts necklace, and just out there dancing and connecting with people. It's just such a profound experience, you know, because like some of the most powerful experiences I've had in sobriety, man, are because what we do is, so we set a table up in the front of the tent that basically makes it so there's only a little walkway to get in, and we cover the tables in candy, and people come up. That's like you know, it's like gnats to a light, you know, or mosquitoes to a light. When ravers see candy, they're like, "Woo, let me get some of that." And especially the kids that are all loaded and whatnot, and people come up to the tent, "Can I have some candy?" And what we do is we say, "Yeah, you sure can have some candy. The cost of the candy is you can either tell me a joke or a secret, or make a donation to the nonprofit." And I will tell you, man, I've heard more profound secrets at that table than I have even almost in some fist steps,
Yeah.
you know, because for some reason people just let their guard down when they realize why we're there. And like, but those moments to see when people realize what you are and why you're there, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm like 95 days sober and I came with all my friends and they're all partying and I feel like I'm going to lose my mind." And like, and now you guys are here. And they like to see them be able to like breathe in that moment and know that they're not alone. It's profound, man.
Yeah. And when you started 10 years ago, those spaces were a lot more rare. You know, I went to a show
Yeah.
Tuesday. It was in a, it was in a bar, but they had a huge NA menu. You know, it was Dave Hawes, who's sober dad I interviewed, and that was, great that they had options there, but not everybody feels like they can do that and go to a bar. But 10 years ago, there was
Oh,
very little option out there for anybody to get support, or especially at big shows. It just wasn't a thing. And, so stepping in 10 years ago, it's incredible.
yeah. I mean, dude, just to watch this thing evolve, how it has evolved, and like to see the level of support we get from the community now versus even 5 years ago is dramatic. It's just, it's like there's this like awakening going on in like, I think in all around the world, and in like especially in the music scenes, be it dance music or rock or whatever it is. There's this awakening happening that I can feel and see. It's palpable, um, of people realizing that like it they don't need to get loaded or they don't need to get drunk or whatever to have a good time. And I think that realization that they can actually have a better time, even if they're not in the rooms. Like, I have friends that like didn't really find their place in the rooms, but have chosen to be sober and are like a big part of my life. And like, there's just something going on. I think a lot of it has to do with like the terrifying climate in which we're living right now when it comes to there is no safe way to party anymore. I mean, booze maybe, but it all leads somewhere to the same place. And it's just, and then you like to see you doing stuff like this. It's just amazing, man. I mean, you had a gentleman on your podcast that was from Blown Away. And that dude's so awesome. And it's so cool to see that you're out here like interviewing people. And like, I have to tell you, I'm very honored that you even asked, because it's like um, sobriety and is the most important aspect of my existence. And like, to have the opportunity to be able to go out into the world and like on the front lines and be of service is so profound, man.
Yeah, and
It
there's
really
so
is.
there's so many ways to do it. So through the Blown Away guy, I learned about Savage Sisters in Philly, which are a harm reduction group. So
Okay.
just learn about there's a lot of ways to serve and to like spread
Hmm.
the word and help people, right? And if we're all trying to just live a good life and help people, the world would be better, you know? And like
Yeah.
to be able to do it at a music show, even cooler is, because there's a lot of us that I always say music saves my life every day. Like
Oh,
if I
dude.
couldn't go see music, I mean, live music to me is like church, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I need it to exist, and so to know that there's spaces out there for those other people who need it but need a sober touchdown or any other kind of safe
Yeah.
space, because there are other groups that are at festivals too, but that people are there, making sure people can do the things they love, and not relapse. That if they're feeling triggered or whatever, they can go to you guys and get recentered and
Hmm.
regroup. It's incredible.
Yeah. It really is, man. I mean, like, and we took the lead from, there's a group they call the Hummingbirds. Um, and, uh, and they were like, the original, they would walk around Grateful Dead shows and Fish shows and stuff like that, holding yellow balloons. Okay. And that yellow balloon signified to everyone around that they were the sober crew. And and like to be doing that like on a dead lot or a fish lot, like that takes courage, first of all, because let's be honest, that's not exactly a place where sobriety is even talked about,
Right.
you know, and and so that's kind of like where the lead was taken from, and like took some examples from they took some examples from them and have kind of expanded upon it now, and it's just turned into this thing that's like, like I had a moment last night, man. I was I was with my sponsee brother, who's one of my best friends, this gentleman by the name of Luke, and him and his fiance, and my friend Sarah. But like me and Luke, we ventured across the front of the stage, and we found our way like right up in like this area between the stage and the crowd. And we're both in our mid to late 40s, and both grayed up, and we were getting down so hard together out there for like an hour. People are filming us and hooting and hollering, and like one person came up to me, he's like, "Man, I want some of what you're on." And I was like, "Well,
It's life.
then you better start your day over. Yeah, you better start your day over." I'm like, I'm high on that bass. You know what I mean? I'm like, I find God right here on the dance floor, man. Like I just, it's like he texted me like right before I went on with you. He's like, "I love you so much, dude." He's like, "That was one of the biggest and best memories of my life last night, just grooving with you to a DJ who's been DJing in the LA rave scene for like 30 years, and like just this crowd of 30,000 people in front of us and we're just getting it. Like we're the only people there, and sobriety has allowed me to do that. It's so ironic to me that like I would get so self-conscious when I was loaded, like, oh, everybody's thinking about me. Why are they looking at me? And I get sober, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be even more self-conscious. And like once I let go, I've never even had that experience ever since I got sober. I feel finally I'm at a place where I just don't care,
Yeah.
and like God in the program has allowed that to happen for me.
So
You
let's
know.
jump off there and kind of go back
Mhm.
in time a little bit.
Mhm.
You've been
Yeah.
going to raves for a long time. So sort of, when did you start using, and then sort of what's that journey for you to, to the point, because you're like 10 years now or more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be 11 in
Yeah,
November.
right
Yeah.
on.
So yeah, man. And so I grew up in a house where my my dad was a very very big international, very successful drug smuggler. Okay, and my mom was a drug addict, and they were both drug addicts. And my dad had a severe cocaine habit, and he actually ended up having a heart attack when I was about 10, and from cocaine. And it was funny. This is pertinent to the story. So, like, my mom put him in treatment. My dad goes through a 30-day treatment program, gets out, get on his motorcycle, and gets hit by a semi truck. Ends up in the hospital with amnesia. And literally, the only thing this man remembered was that he loved cocaine. And he didn't remember us. He remembered how to get to his friend Bob's house and that he loved cocaine. And he went, did coke for another 5 days, and had another heart attack. Ended up getting sober that time, and it stuck. He's 35 years sober. So shortly thereafter, I was probably 11. I had tried weed right before that. Well, I didn't really like weed per se at the time, but I liked the way that the other kids in the neighborhood treated me when I brought it around. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I like to feel a part of, like I realized in getting sober, man, that like drugs and alcohol were definitely, they were just a solution to my problem. My problem was I had the inability to create a bond and foster a relationship with another human being without there being some sort of ulterior motive behind it, and even at a young age. And I was looking for some weed in my mom's closet, and I came across a bag of a cigarette cellophane full to the brim. Now, mind you, this is 1988. Cigarette cellophane full to the brim with this yellow crystally substance I know now to be crank. And my cousin was with me. He's like, "You should take some." And I'm like, "I'm just gonna take it all." My mom's not gonna ask me if I took her meth, and she didn't. And at the tender age of 11, because I didn't know any better, I did a line about the size of a pencil, and I'll tell you, man, in that moment, I felt like a superhero. Like all those feelings of like disdain for myself and guilt, un like like unnecessary guilt. I didn't have anything to be guilty about, but I felt that way from a very young age. That guilt and shame and like disconnection and like not feeling a part of everything just disappeared in that moment. And like I like to say that like a series of conscious decisions led me to getting sober. Like everything I did leading up to the time when I walked into the room of Alcoholics Anonymous um, was a conscious decision that I made. I like to tell myself otherwise in the past, but that was just not the case. And that's where my journey started in drugs. Funny thing is like I found my home in AA when alcohol was more of a necessity, not something I really enjoyed. But I used it as a necessity. And by the time when I was 12, so I'm starting to dabble in meth, and I would spend the weekends at my dad's in Santa Barbara and go to like 7 meetings a weekend, literally like with him. And I'm like, 11, 12-year-old kid dabbling in meth. They think I'm just kind of like crazy, like ADD kid, but I'm just twacked at a very young age. And you know, I would spend all that time there and then come home, and it was just like I found myself in this state of confusion. And then I was around 12, and the DEA came knocking, and they took my dad, and basically he came to the door, and he was just like, they're like, "Are you Brian O'Day?" And he's like, "I wish I wasn't, but I am." And he ended up going to federal prison. And so that like exposure to sobriety of any sort just was snatched away. And at that point, all bets were off, man. And methamphetamine was my first love, and I was in that relationship for a very, very, very long time. And I was about 14, 15 when someone took me to my first underground party, and that was the first time I went somewhere where people use drugs like me. And like I was like, man, I have arrived, like Bill says in the book. I have found my home. And again, another conscious decision. I'm like, I want to be here forever. And so like I dropped out of high school. I went to parties 6, 7 days a week all the way through my teens. And it wasn't like I was being told by anyone that I, you know, shouldn't do something or wasn't allowed to do something or, hey, you should be at home. It was like I would come home and I would bring a group of people and nitrous tanks and turntables. And as long as somebody gave my mom some meth or some weed, she just really didn't care. She'd let us do whatever we want. And she was just trying to survive and doing the best with what she could. She had her own addiction to deal with. Plus, she was trying to support two kids, and and she did a good job. We never wanted anything. I will say that. My mom worked her butt off and always provided for us. We always had a roof over our head and food and clothes and everything that a kid needs, and love. You know, um, Man, if love meant anything and me not getting high, I would never have picked up anything because my mom loved us beyond comparison. And I became that very high functioning tweaker. Like I always had a job, I always had a car and a truck and a house and like the money in the bank, and like from an outside perspective my life looked really good. And but I was a robot. I was a soulless monster, and I didn't care about anyone or anything. And all I focused on was just making money and staying high. And that was my existence for a really, really, really long time. And then eventually, I had met her, and we had a son. Well, we were together for a while. She got pregnant. We got married. At the time, we despised each other leading a couple years leading up to that. And but her family was really serious about us getting married. And I I said immediately, I was like, this is a really bad idea. I'm like, you guys should just take this money you're spending on the wedding and just put it towards a home for your daughter to live in when we get a divorce, because I already knew where it was coming. Like it was the truth. And then my son was born. Right before he was born, I got injured at work. So the first 2 years of him being at home, of being born, I was at home with him. And my ex-wife went back to work after about a couple of months, and then ultimately she started cheating on me. And when I discovered this, uh, it just broke me, which was so surprising because I didn't want to be in the relationship anyways. But all of a sudden, I have this like moral compass, like, hey, how dare you do that to me? Don't you know who I think I am? Type of vibe. And I ran away. I got scared and I ran away. And I didn't just run down the street. I ran to another state. And and then shortly thereafter, I met another her, and that's when I got introduced to opiates. And I held out for about 6 months with her. She was an oxy addict. She had a PhD in psychology and was worked for Washington State's Behavioral Health Resources and was the most psychotic opiate addict I ever met. And after about 6 months, I finally one day I said, I'm like, I want to feel how you look. And and that was a wrap, man. I never watched my life spiral until that moment. And over the course of like the next 6 years, I just watched my life disintegrate into this pile of ashes. And I ended up back in LA and got arrested a series of times. And, you know, I always like to, I didn't come, I knew about AA and I knew about sobriety and like I did my best to avoid it, which I'm glad because I've dealt with a lot of guys over the years. And if you're not absolutely positive that this is your last stop, you're probably not going to stick around. At least that's been my experience. And I came to my first meeting. I got put in treatment for drug court, and then got off of drug court, and then went on a run, absconded for a long time, and ended up getting arrested. Was looking at some time, like a few years, and I'm in court, and the judge just so happens to be my drug court judge, and he's like, "Mr. O'Day, I'm going to give you one last opportunity." And he put me on a high control probation situation, and I remember, man, like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the pod waiting to get released at Van Nuys Courthouse, and I'm like, leading up to that moment, I had those like Hail Mary prayers, those backseat of the cop car prayers, like if you get me out of this, God, I'll do anything, you know. And this guy comes into the pod and he's like, "Hey, bro, my girl's outside and she's got A, B, and C. You should come with us. We're gonna have fun." And I forgot about all those prayers in that moment, and then we leave, and that spiritual defense the book talks about step between me and that moment was like, "Hey, stupid, what are you doing? Go down to the corner, beg the bus driver to give you a ride to go up to the corner of Ventura and Van Nuys to that men's meeting that they took you to when you were in treatment." And mind you, I'm in a paper suit from county, no underwear on, the county shoes. You can see right through the paper suit, and that's what I did. And I walked to the corner, begged the bus driver for a ride. I didn't have any money, no cigarettes, no nothing. And he drove me, and I walked into this meeting called Prime Time in the Valley on Monday nights, and I asked for help for the first time. And and I thought that's where my journey in sobriety started, but the truth is, it didn't really start till about 4 years sober because I did what we do in AA. I got the sponsor, I got did the steps, I fought and got all the commitments, but I just could not wrap my head around the God concept. I was just like so adamantly against it. And at 18 months sober, man, I found myself in a place where I was closer than I've ever been to killing myself. And because I didn't have any God in my life, but I didn't know that's why it was. And thank God I have a sponsor who's like, I call him and I'm like, "Ah, bah, 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 bah." And he's like, "What did God say?" Click, and hangs, and like, because he had to, no, not at all. But man, it hammered home to me this idea that, like, okay, dude, I need to let go of this idea that I have some idea how to run my life. And like, and I look at the man who I'm asking for help from, and I see this beautiful life that he's blossomed. And I'm like, and the only thing he tells me every time I ask him is how is you got to turn to God, man. You got to lean into that power that the book talks about. And I was just so like this. So why do I want an imaginary friend that's gonna do nothing for me? That was my mindset, you know. And over time, God became undeniable when I just started to pay attention and like actually pay attention and get out of my own way and pay attention to the things that were occurring around me. I just didn't have room to deny it anymore. And really, I didn't believe in God until I was about 4 years sober. But that's where my like real journey in AA started, you know, and like in sobriety in the world in general. That's when I actually was able to be a man who's of service and who is like wants to be of service, you know. And it's been a wild ride, you know, and to be in a place now where I'm actively involved with this nonprofit and going to this festival and that festival and like I'll go out to underground parties and people are like, the sober guy, you know, and it's just like I saw you at that consciousness tent thing, you know, and like it's it's astonishing, man. I never could have thought my life would end up looking like it does today, you know, and it's the best part about it is I am sure of the fact that I had nothing to do with it except just showing up, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think some people, they do get hung up on like the God thing or what that's defined as, or the spiritual. So, people find different paths through it, but I know that some people do get hung up or, that doesn't resonate with them. That's why it's good. There's lots of ways. People got to find the way that works for them.
Yeah, yeah, you got to find your place. You know, you got to find your tribe. It's like because you can't do this shit alone, man. You know, and it's like once you find your people, everything just kind of will fall into place. You know, but there's so many amazing avenues nowadays that lead to sobriety, and it's such a blessing and such a great time we're living in. You know.
I mean, the thread that I get, because you're the 31st person I've interviewed
Hmm.
for this, is that almost to an episode, people talk about community,
Hmm.
right? And that's what you do at those
Yeah.
raves and festivals is you're creating community. And so that, really is that thing that the rooms are community and your tent is community
Hmm.
because you got to find people who got your back. Not to get like political, but it seems like now in this country we're good at turning our backs on each other
Hmm.
instead of like turning our hearts toward each other.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. You know, it's like this country needs love for one another more than anything at this time. You know, it's like we're so polarizing to each other. It's insane. You know, it's crazy. It's sad.
So I've never been to a rave and I'm 53. I've been to probably hundreds of shows, but for people who haven't been, what's kind of the vibe and how is it different from going to a Lollapalooza?
Well, so it's like an EDM festival.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this: like you go to like a rock show or like a Lollapalooza type of show. Um, you'll see, at least from my experience, it seems like alcohol is really the prevalent way that people get to where they want to be, you know? And so the vibe can be a little different. Um, at times it can be a little more aggressive, you know, and
Yeah. Drunk
yeah,
people.
you know, and the raves,
And it's sanctioned,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
They're selling it there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like as if Insomniac was like, okay, so we need to hire a bunch of drug dealers and place them all over the festival so that people have easy access to go and get their drugs. Because I mean, dude, you walk through these festivals. I mean, not to say like drinking is not a thing at those festivals. The ones I go to, it is definitely a thing, and there is every 100 feet there is somewhere you can buy alcohol. you know. Um, but I mean, there's also now like you go to EDC in Vegas and they actually sell weed at the festivals now, and they have like cannabis
Right.
stores, But I think that the thing that's a little different at a music festival, around an electronic music festival at least, is so the rave scene has this term that everybody likes to use, and I've just been hearing it for so many years. I don't use it, but it's plur, which is peace, love, unity, raving, or respect, which one depends on who you are, and people tend to try and abide by that. It's a very opening, I love you, like, oh, you're amazing type of vibe. Now, mind you, there's a lot of people on ecstasy, but but um but the vibe is a lot different. But you can also go to one stage where they'll have like really hardcore friggin' dubstep or like really, really hard techno, and the vibe can kind of feel, because there's mosh pits and stuff like that in these dubstep stages, and so the vibe can kind of feel like you're at like a metal show. And but then you go over to like the house stage, and it's just like everyone's just grooving and happy, and it's just so like it's just a vibe. And so that's the one thing I will say about these festivals is that any area you go to, you could have a completely different experience. It's like over here, you could totally feel like you just went to a full on hardcore metal show because there's a guy on the stage who's not only DJing, but he's playing guitar and he's screaming into the microphone and he's mixing music, like mixing like Slayer songs with dubstep tracks and like, or like, you could go over to this stage and you feel like you're at a jazz show because this guy's playing what they call like mushroom jazz, which is like a house music hybrid of jazz. And so it's like the experience is like all encompassing. Like there's so many different, like depending on how you're feeling in that moment, you could walk across the festival and almost feel like you're in a completely different place. And that's what's really cool about it. And they also put a lot into experience at these festivals, like the production and like all these little like, photo ops and like little weird, like the festival, for instance, last night, it's Beyond Wonderland. So it's got a full Alice in Wonderland vibe to it. And like they had this one area, which I got this lit. It's like this lady is it's a, they call it the down the rabbit hole. You walk through this thing, it literally looks like the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland that she falls down and opens up into this big garden. And there's the Mad Hatter's Tea Party over there, and you have like all this stage with some guy doing like what kind of like seems like country music meets techno, very interesting, dressed like the rhinestone cowboy outfit, and then over here you have a barter tent, basically where you can buy, trade, or play games to get items, and so like I was like, oh my God, that person's going to be there. And that's what's kind of cool about the experience is like, I was thinking long in advance, what can I bring to trade? Because I want to go and have that experience. So I went in there with some old rings I didn't have, don't ever wear, and traded up for this and another glass charm. And you get to like, there's a lot of connection that happens, I find, like when you meet people and like, even just people that are vendors, like this person, Phoenix, that runs that barter tent. They do them all over the country. Electric Forest. They also do like some hippie festivals and like fish shows and stuff like that. And like, there's a lot of connecting. That's the one thing I really love about the rave community that varies, I think, than most other musical settings is everybody's just wants to connect with everybody. Everybody wants to hold each other up. And I don't know, it's something really special about it, man. It's like I have a hard time with aggressiveness because like I'm 6'2", 280 pounds. Dudes with alcohol in their system tend to like to challenge me for some reason. No matter how I look, I can go dressed like
Yeah, I'm
this.
5'6". People don't do that to me.
It just seems.
They're like, yeah, whatever. There's no challenge there. I'll just blow on him and he'll fall over. Um, but I think part of it, and I think that scene in any music, it's like just stepping out of your daily life a little bit
Yeah.
and just letting your brain, like Tuesday, I'm there with my wife, just closing my eyes and just listening to the music and just, feeling like I'm separated from the world for a minute. Went to, I guess it was in December, Allison Russell.
Okay.
I don't know if you know
I've
her.
heard the
She's
name, yes.
she's incredible. And, I felt like I was floating at that show. She's just so incredible. It was a small venue and just closing my eyes and that's what, music has always done for
Oh
me,
yeah,
for
man. I
sure.
had a similar experience at have you heard of Nako?
Mm-mm.
Nako and Medicine for the People. He's this like he looks like he's Polynesian, I'm not sure, but he's got like all the Polynesian tattoos on his face and everywhere. But has the voice of an angel, and he's like a incredible piano player, guitar player, plays a fiddle, he plays like all these different instruments, and like he just uh, I like I went with my sponsor and like a bunch of friends, and I looked down the road, dude, and we're all sitting there and we're all crying at the same time, but not badly, just because we felt so
Yeah.
emotionally connected to the music, and like I never got to experience that before I got sober. I just was like, all right, I got this. My pockets are full, ready to go. Let's go to the concert or the rock show or the festival or the underground. And what am I going to do tonight? What am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? What am I going to smoke? And like, I'm so focused on all that and how I feel because of what I've consumed that I miss the moment. And, like, I mean, I love, like, I saw John Mayer uh, do his solo thing last year, and it's like just him, like 10 different guitars and a piano for 3 hours. And like, I've never been able to be emotionally connected to music like I have since I got sober, man. It's like I find peace and freedom in the music, and it doesn't really matter what kind it is. I just have a very special place in my heart for the rave scene, and to have the opportunity to be able to go out there and be of service and give back, I'm so overpaid, dude.
Yeah. Do you ever feel tempted now? Or are you like, just like, all right, I got this. This is, my one day at a time is pretty smooth.
Yeah, that's it, man. Like, you know, I have not had an experience, and now, mind you, like, not all my friends are sober. I also do this other thing with Insomniac called Camp OG, and because Insomniac, actually, which is now the biggest festival promoter in the world, this started out as just a little Friday night after hours where there was like 200 people, and it would be every Friday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., different venue, usually illegal warehouses, and and to be where they're at today is just like crazy. And like, so a lot of my friends that I'm still friends with, we do this thing called Camp OG at the Insomniac festivals where we basically are like a renegade underground party inside the big music festival. And we do it in the camping area and in the festival. And although besides me and my boy that I was with last night, Luke, um, we're the only two guys that are sober that put that thing on. And so there's definitely been moments where I'm like, my friends are partying, they're doing, sapping balloons or doing ketamine or whatever the hell they're doing. And, I've had a lot of moments where they're like, here, dude, like just because they're high and they're not really paying attention and they're just trying to be nice. I'm like, here, bro. And I'm like, I'm good. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And like the fact that it does not even cross my mind today. Literally, it's like you said, I cannot see my life any other way than being in recovery and being of service. It's just like, like I always say when I share meetings, man, like you're in this room and you're looking for that good dope, that first shot, that first line. Start sponsoring people and take them through the work. When you sit across the table from someone and you see that light come on in their eye, that's the good dope right there. You know what I mean? I never got higher ever in my whole life than I did when I got to see one of my sponsees have a sponsee and like take a year and start taking other people through the work and to have them tell me, hey man, thank you. Thank you for teaching me how to be free. You know, it's like, it makes me, it makes all the hair on my body stand up, man. You know, I could never imagine my life being any other way now. You know, temptation doesn't even cross my mind.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. Sober Dad Crew is a DIY project by Stephen Kimball, who writes, edits, and produces the show. To support the show, please review it where you listen to podcasts or visit soberdadcrew.com to buy some merchandise or make a donation. Thanks for listening. For more information, for links to any music or books we talked about, or to buy some Sober Dad Crew merchandise, please visit SoberDadCrew.com.